So right now we're standing inside of the Factory of Fear haunted attraction in Moline, Illinois, which is one of our hometown haunts. Like, this is a place that Brian and I used to go to all the time in high school when we were just looking to get scared. And ironically, 20 years later, we get the opportunity to make a haunted house movie. And this is kind of the bones of what we were always imagining of what the most terrifying haunted house could actually be.
And it's really weird, like, rolling up to this haunted house after 20 years, and it's like, we're just like, why don't we just film it here?
Our monster break room would be right back there.
This would have been so much easier if we just filmed here.
Say happy Halloween! Happy Halloween!
With Haunt, one of the main things we kept talking about is like, what is Halloween about? Fundamentally, it's about dress up. It's about putting on a mask and becoming somebody other than who you are. And we thought, oh, that might be a really interesting entry point to talk about a young woman who is stuck in this relationship that is abusive and not healthy, and every single day of her life she wakes up and she puts on a mask. She puts on literally physically makeup to cover up damage or scars to herself, but she's also just putting on this metaphorical mask of everything's fine, I'm great, everything's fine.
We're moving away from horror films that are just for shock and awe value. I was very excited to be a part of a film that actually had a story that made you invested in each one of these characters, especially dealing with something like abuse in a relationship. The parallel of what that does to her psyche going through the haunted house and feeling like she's being followed the whole time. I unfortunately know people who have been in abusive relationships, and what that does to you mentally, and the fact that you feel that there's no escape.
Is someone following us?
And you have to kind of live in this silent struggle. Yeah. It's ultimately her journey of, how do I advocate for myself? How do I stand up for myself? And how do I not succumb to a demise? Because I think that that's something that she didn't know how to do in her relationship.
Hey, did your boyfriend just throw a pumpkin at our door?
If you just read the words on the page that Bailey says and the description of her, you would think she's very snarky and mean, but I didn't really want to play her that way. I wanted to play it more like she cares about Harper and she just wants Harper to be okay. And so it makes her like angry when things are happening to Harper.
Bailey, no, you are breaking up with this bitch tonight.
Don't.
Okay?
And I wanted to play her real.
Bailey, stop!
You have somebody that's really close to you and they're in a situation that's not good for them, you really just want the best for them. And sometimes it doesn't come out the best way, and then sometimes it comes out fine. But with Bailey, she kind of erred on the side of brutal honesty kind of all the time.
Harper, you had a bruise on your face.
It did drive a wedge between them. And you kind of feel that in some of the scenes. Like, they do love each other, but you really kind of see them connect and get each other for the first time when Harper tells Bailey about her parents and about her home life.
That's where I hurt my mom.
For me, in that moment, it was kind of like a click for Bailey. Like, oh, so she's kind of accepting this because it's what she lived with her whole life. And so I think it softened Bailey.
We hit up the food trucks on campus. Netflix is scary movie, yeah?
Dude, I could eat.
I'm hungry too.
Yo, guys. Or we could go to an extreme haunted house.
No. Yes. Haunted house tonight.
Yes.
No.
Art sort of imitated life on this movie. I think all of the actors in this film probably came with the whole idea of how we were going to play our characters. But what ended up happening is we all just sort of started playing ourselves, and it worked in the film.
It would scare Bailey's if they defunded Planned Parenthood, am I right?
And I think Evan is a good time. He's very much like me in the way that he speaks in sarcastic tones all the time. Of all the stuff I've worked on, this was probably the most fulfilling experience I've ever had in a movie, strictly because what you see on camera with the cast and the bond between these characters was 100% authentic. That happened immediately when we got down there. So when we're watching our friends bleed or we're watching them, like, be tortured or suffer, we felt that.
I didn't know you were still on the team.
Took a wild pitch to the face last season.
He's like more akin to what I think athletes are actually like. Just a guy that's been humbled from some injuries. That was what really attracted me to the role, to be honest, is, you know, I am an athlete, but I tore my ACL my senior year of high school playing football. And your entire life you've been dreaming of your senior season to play football, you know? So it's like this huge thing, and all of a sudden it's just like gone. I'm a baseball fan, but I was like more of a baseball fan filming this movie because I was studying batters and like specifically like sluggers and like how they swing and like how they approach the plate.
Fuck off.
No, really, it's from Thailand. They put a ceremonial spider in every bottle. You don't want to touch it?
Nope, I know it's Halloween. I'm not doing that.
Seriously? You're still afraid of spiders?
Yeah.
They're all in college, and she was trying to she was auditioning for some part in Thoroughly Modern Millie, and so she was like always putting on this accent and stuff. I'm not sure if any of the accent actually made it through. Ironically, the funny thing, I think the character of Mallory, opposite from me, is so into haunted houses, so it's kind of fun to just
I really don't
totally lie about that.
Then just get it over with, sweet cheeks.
The first night I got there, Katie and Will were like, we're the first ones here, want to grab a drink? And so I met up with them, and it was the night before my hair was dyed blonde, because they had me dye my hair blonde for the part. And we just all, I mean, they just seemed so down to earth and chill. Shazi was the last one to join, and we all just really bonded. And Lauren is a little younger than all of us, so we kind of were like mama bears to her.
Once we started thinking about that thematic idea for our protagonist, that we then started thinking, who are these villains? And what masks are they wearing, and what are they hiding behind that mask?
Also came from the idea, like a visual inspiration point, where we were looking at like Halloween masks of the past, like these vintage vacuum form masks, and how inherently terrifying they've actually become, even though they started from a very, I think, you know, childhood inspiration point, but trying to one-up that in terms of what the design would actually be, and the idea that what you see on the surface is not always face value.
Character of the clown, one of the things that we talked about, and they wanted to try to do something almost like Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, just that quiet, very reserved. They said, play with voices. The first thing that came to mind was Philip Seymour Hoffman.
You're too late, Sam.
How he, you know, God bless him, had that deep voice. I had an idea of a background for the guy, and I actually talked to a police officer about criminals going to prison, meeting people, getting out of prison, just that life. He's definitely someone that enjoys what he does, and he's just a bad, bad guy.
All these bad guys were in for the same goal, but each one of them seemed so different. You know, you have like a loose cannon, you got a guy in charge, and then you got this other guy, Mitch, or the Ghost. Things were kind of getting out of their control, and to reel these college kids back to where they needed them, you know, he had to break character, kind of talk to them and ease them a little bit. And I wanted to really try to sell that idea. Like really keep people guessing if he was bad or not.
What's your fucking name?
Sir, my name's Harper. Okay, we really appreciate your help. Could you please just tell us who you are?
You can call me Mitch.
Thanks, Mitch.
I think you kick yourself afterwards. You're like, God, what? Of course he is. You know, God, of course he was bad.
I remember it was a really good conversation. We were able to really sit down and hash out a good plan of what they wanted for sort of each each character in terms, not maybe the final details, but kind of the broad strokes. It was all based on, modification and maybe tattoos and things like that. So that was enough for us to take a ball and really run with it. So there were basically 5 characters we did, right? The clown and devil, and the zombie, and the ghost, and the witch. I designed the witch, ghost, and the devil. And Hugo did the clown and the zombie. We were looking at all these different people. People have modified themselves into lizards, split tongue, and tattooing their eyeballs, and putting steel, nuggets of ball bearings and things in their under their skin. And what can we do to Damien that we could actually, get away with? The original design actually had him tattooed, his whole head was tattooed red. It was like, I don't know if I like him red. Like, I think we should pull it back. Like, we just went for, well, if he's the devil, maybe we can incorporate some sort of horn, So I had the idea of using those big metal studs. Something's under his skin protruding, and then it's finished off with a stud. We modified his ear so they were clipped, the ear clipping where they split it, sew it back. It looks like elfin kind of thing. We did all the barbs into the chin, and I just sort of did some really quick tattoos. That was how the devil sort of evolved into what he was. The ghost, he should have a blank face. What could that be in terms of modification? Well, what if he was just horribly burned? So I modeled it off pictures of burned victims, and that's why he has no nose. It's all the cartilage is gone, and the scar tissue kind of goes up into his eye. But because he takes the paint and rubs in the black, that's the ghost part, right? That's the the proverbial sheet over the head with the eyes and the mouth cut out. And then the witch. She only got a little bit of screen time. She was really fun to do. And it was how do we build this iconic sort of what people think of as a witch with body modification? Because of so many quick shots, you couldn't exactly see what was happening, but there was scar tissue going right to her ear. It was cut and then sewn. Her nose is literally sewn on, pushing out the chin.
They didn't want me to do anything with my hair, because I was like, should I shave it? Because everyone else, Cheney and Damien and all those guys, shaved their head to put on the makeup, and they're like, no, hold off on that. And so then they told me, we're gonna shave the top of your head and then bleach your hair blonde and everything. We really hoping that would work. And it was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just happy to be there. So it was hours of sitting in the chair, but it was such fun just talking with those guys and watching the details that they would do. It was just amazing. And then at the end of the day, it was about 45 minutes to just take it all off.
For us, what we loved and what we're standing in right now is a haunted house that essentially is an old factory building. And we love kind of the pared down aesthetic of that you could literally just let people walk into a darkened room here and inherently there'd be fear without making loud noises around every corner.
And we also wanted a haunted house that felt like it could be propped up overnight, that it could be designed by people who weren't necessarily in the haunt industry.
We thought about, wooden pallets you can find in an abandoned factory. You can just put those together and create these incredible corridors that essentially create a maze that you feel completely trapped in, or using different, found objects or nails or knives, just something that inherently can be made terrifying, but you could find in your own backyard.
Hi.
And we also wanted it to feel like the paint was still drying. You know, it's like they just put it together. Like we kept saying, they turn a corner and there's some kind of jack-o'-lantern ornament or whatever. We're happy to see a price tag still on it. Like they didn't quite have enough time to get it ready for these people.
We shot in Kentucky. We were in this old abandoned, like I think it used to be a dairy factory. They had all of the rooms set up, and it was freaky in and of itself, which was a great location to actually have. Because I remember a couple times, you know, when we were on break or when we would go to lunch, me and some of the cast would like just walk through it and like browse around, and there were parts that we didn't even use, but they were just scary.
I was shocked when I walked in the first day when we shot at the haunt, because it was only a couple of days after they showed us the completely empty haunt. They were like, we're gonna build this tunnel, and I walked in for the first time and seeing everything that they had done, all the work that everybody had put in to make this a haunt, because it really was.
It was real. Like it was a real haunt. Like we could have opened the doors and had people go through that right away. It was very real. And it was difficult. It was challenging to film in that environment. It wasn't challenging in the way that we had to act very hard, because it was, you know, it was real. We weren't really having to, I didn't have to act like my legs hurt from crawling in these wooden tunnels for a while, because they hurt.
I had seen the clown because I didn't have any scenes with him. So like, I remember just passing him when we were on set because he had just finished a scene, and I was like, oh my, no.
Like the makeup guys had to be around you to always make sure everything was glued on and everything. And when it was on, you just kind of stayed in that zone, you know? And like, you know, when people come up and talk to you and, you know, you talk to them and, you know, you're just hanging out. But once it's time to film, you were just locked in the mask, the costume, the hair, and the sledgehammer that they gave me was just, you walk around with that stuff and you kind of just get into that zone and kind of stay in it.
None of us knew what any of them looked like under the mask until, well, at least I didn't.
I think it was only towards the last days that they kind of, you know, ate in the same areas as, but I think that was also a director choice to keep us separate from them and to kind of keep them a scary presence.
I showed up on set to do the scene with the ghost, and I show up and there's this cat that's like, I haven't recognized. This is like week 2 or 3. And there's this cat standing there in some like beat up sneakers and jeans. And he's like smoking like a long, like Marlboro 100 and like drinking like a Red Bull, like this tall. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? It's like a grip or something. Like, what's up with this?
Okay, Mitch. I think we would feel a lot more fucking comfortable if you took off that fucking mask.
So like my only experience with Chaney, the actor, was that there was a guy that's intimidating, that's kind of staring me down as I walk on to set.
It was almost kind of empowering, you know, because that's exactly, I think, how I thought of it. Like, you know, Michael Myers, all these famous masked bad guys, you know, and it's you think you hear the music in your head when you put that bad boy on. You're like, ah. Yeah, you know, it's almost like you're waking up.
I mean, dealing with, you know, the scene where I'm in the big coffin and the spiders are coming down on me and everything. I mean, we shot that quite a few times, and every time they dropped these like nasty, dirty prop spiders. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I think just creating the environment for it. And also, again, Scott and Brian, like when those scenes were intense, I feel like they created a really safe environment. And also, I'm terrified of spiders. So that all happening was just kind of, I could draw from personal experience.
The hands was the worst part, because I actually had, they like did my hands, like if you remember when you were a child, you put like Elmer's glue on your hands. So it's like that consistency, and then they would just like peel up parts of it and then they would paint it. So after I had my hands like that, which is for a lot of the film, I couldn't touch anything. I literally was just like walking around set like this all the time so that it wouldn't get messed up. And, you know, for me, it was also, how do I touch things and like be in pain when I'm touching things? Like, there were so many things to think about.
Hey man, please be I need your help. Someone's fucking around in here.
Mallory!
What's going on?
Mallory, what are you doing? Mallory!
I had to, oh my God. Well, it was just easy for me because I just got to lay in a bag, really. And then the witch dragged me out and just unzipped me, and I had to keep a straight face, obviously. But this is gross. But that body, I was really in a body bag, and I guess it was safe. There was a stunt person that said it was safe, but you know, I was zipped up in there for quite a bit. And if there were notes given between scenes, just kind of left in there. One time I for sure farted, and then they called action, and then I was like, I have to keep a straight face.
For me, it was so hard because I was like, how do I make all of the things that are going to happen to me as authentic as I possibly can without having ever experienced any of this? Every day that we shot something where it was after I had stepped on the nail, like any scene that was after that, I would find a rock every day and I would put it in my shoe of the foot that I had to, because I was like, I don't want to forget that happened to me. So like, I need something in there as a reminder of like, to be uncomfortable.
I remember when they said, okay, you're gonna walk up and you're gonna take the sledgehammer to the window. I'm like, really? Like, I'm gonna do that? You're gonna let me do that? That's awesome. He's like, yeah, but make sure you hit it, you know, like hold the hammer like this and make sure you do this because we don't want it to bounce back and hit you in the face. It's like, absolutely. And so I went up and they're like, you know, get in there and just like look for the keys to try to get rid of the car. So, you know, you do it and then you get in, you're like, man, I'm getting to do like action stuff. This is awesome.
Oh, it got painful, actually a little bit, but we did it safely. It's just, you know, you do it. And he's such a fit dude, man. He's strong as an ox. That actually made that, the wrestling around and the whole locker sequence. I remember it was a real hammer. And I was so fucking scared. Because they said, man, drive it right towards his head, and he's gonna move. He's gonna move. And Will even said, he's like, man, I'm gonna move. I got it. I was like, I did that a couple times, man, before I could really nail it. So I just did one. It's, you know, it was just so scary.
You ready?
They had this big old black cloak on me and the mask, and I remember when Katie was she was such a little mom when we were shooting that scene, because I had to have my hands bound and the thing around me, and then I had to have tape on my mouth with blood capsules in my mouth, mask on, and then be laying down on the floor. She was like, they're like torturing you. I was like, it's okay, no, it's fun, but her coverage or my coverage. She was like, guys, get Lauren a cup. Let's let her spit this stuff out because it's all in her mouth. That was my last day on set. Felt kind of like closure. Like, we started filming with the very first scene, and then we ended with the very last. For me, it like started with Bailey and Harper, and it ended with Bailey and Harper.
It ended, it wrapped, and you know, everybody said bye. The wrap party wasn't too long after that, so I think maybe there was only a few days left anyway, left to film, but it wasn't bittersweet. Like, it was just kind of bitter. I didn't want it to be over, you know. It's like, you sure there's not another bit we can, you know, I got an idea about a whole nother scene. It was hard to leave because it was such an enjoyable set, man. Like, even just when not working, it was just fun to sit there and watch. They'd cut me and I'd sit around and watch. Like, it's a lot of fun, man.
It was so sad because like as people's characters started dying off, the set got smaller and smaller to where like in the final days of shooting, it wound up being only me and Will left. So it was really weird when like Shazi died, and Skylar died, and Andrew died, and Lauren died. Like everybody just started, it was like one by one, our cast started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The last day that we were all together shooting was when we were on the location that was actually the outside of the haunt, when we were in that field. So that same day was like one of the only days, because we only had that location, and so we were shooting overnight. So we got to set at like 5 a.m. and then left at like 6 a.m. and watched the sunrise together.
The last day of filming was the night before Thanksgiving, and it was the scene where I set the haunt on fire. That was the that last scene, and it's one of those things where I think we just stopped for a second, because whenever someone's done, they're like, okay, that's a wrap for Chaney, last day, and everyone claps and everything, and they said that's a wrap for the clown, and then Scott, geez, I did not expect this to happen. Scott and Brian came up and we gave each other a hug, because we've been doing it for so long, and they're just good friends of mine, and it was pretty cool to be on a movie like that. So next day, drove to, it was a cool drive home, and got home in time for Thanksgiving to see my wife and family, and it was a good time. So yeah.
Tom and I have been a team for our whole careers. We met in grad school at Princeton and worked together really ever since. And Scott and Brian are similarly a team. They finish each other's sentences like Tom and I do. They lean on each other in the way that we understand how a good team leans on each other. There's a particular power and a particular dynamic in a duo, I think. So it was just so funny, because the minute we got on the Zoom call, we all four immediately recognized this weird mirror quadrangle thing that Tom and Andy plus Scott and Brian equaled, and that was really fun. They had a really neat idea in the beginning, which we ran with, which was that the music in the beginning of the movie should be more genre, to kind of follow the experience of the characters and of the audience. That in the beginning, you're going to a haunted house where you're in a movie about a haunted house, and you think you know what the boundaries are, and the music should stay on the rails for the genre a bit. And then as the characters start to experience the raw horror, and that the contract of the haunted house is being violated, so too would the score depart from whatever little social safe boundaries might have been around it, and become raw and visceral and even painful for the second half. There's a very strong shift instrumentationally between the first and second half. In the first half, there are a lot more strings, real strings, and so even some horns, some subtle orchestral elements. Once you shift into the rawness of the second half, we tried to make sure that while there might still be some real instruments left alive and breathing in the second half, they had problems. If there were strings in the back half, they're poorly tuned, or they're raspy, or something bad has happened to them. Same with there are actually some horns that survive into the second half, but they're just a mess, and they can't play together or in tune anymore.
We're really proud, I think, of the cast that we brought together, and the people, especially like the monsters. Like, it was so fun to watch Chaney and Justin and Damien really bring those villain characters to life. And I think what would be the most exciting next chapter for us with this film is to bring more monsters to life.
And I think, like, for me, one of the exciting things about this ride was having the opportunity to work with producer Eli Roth, whose movies kind of taught us so much from his DVD commentaries and the making ofs. And so in a way, it kind of became full circle to have him mentor us during the making of this film.
Yeah, Scott and Brian as directors, I'd watched throughout the years, like, just as an example, when there's multiple actors in a scene, they would, Scott would go to one, Brian would go to the other. Like, I think that's what's really cool about having two directors. they're so laid back and comfortable, and I don't know, man, they just make the set very at ease.
They are amazing. When we got there and when we started talking and shooting, I fell in love with them. I fell in love with the way that they worked. I fell in love with the way that they wrote the script, because their scripts are very detailed. They immerse you. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the film so bad.
They were awesome. They had a very clear vision from the second I arrived. And I was also a little hesitant because I was just like, you know, I'd never worked with two directors before, and I was like, oh, am I gonna get conflicting notes? You know, but they were so on the same page. I mean, they're just slave and partners forever, so they just can, like, you know, read each other's thoughts.
They're so good for that genre, and there's nowadays so few filmmakers that really bring something to that genre that it needs, and they are that. But just as far as just the types of guys they are, man, they're real movie-loving, horror-loving, down-to-earth dudes.
I don't know if I'll ever have that experience again of working with two people who have known each other for so long, support each other in such a way, have the same love and passion for what they do, and just work so well together. So it was really great to be able to be a part of that. That's like my bar, is Scott and Brian.